Right. So nice to meet you. And how did you start? How did you get to the field of computational photography?
Well, I mean, this is many, many years ago. I mean, the field probably started in the late 90s with researchers who were initially actually interested in view synthesis and image-based rendering. So a lot of the early work started from that field because those were people who were really interested in photography to begin with. So I started getting engaged with that community back then when I was I had practically just graduated myself, and yeah, in the early 2000s we started um, looking at different ways in which we could combine cameras and algorithms for photography related tasks. Yeah, so it's been a long time since then. Of course, the field has progressed quite a bit.
So your first work was on cameras involving for 3D imaging or no synthesis.
Yeah, I mean, back then I was working on multi-view stereo techniques that were actually quite related to, volumetric reconstruction that's happening right now. But back then, of course, it was much more primitive algorithms. But I was also interested in photography myself, and so I just wanted to think more broadly about how algorithms and cameras can be combined. I would say that probably the earliest work in this area that I used as motivation was work in panoramic imaging. This is Rick Zaleski's work, Singbin Kang, Harry Shum, who were working in this area at the time. There was Shmuel Peleg, who was also doing a lot of work with cameras back then. Mark Lavoie with his work on light field rendering, and later on with the light field cameras themselves. Again, those were all very interesting pieces of work. There was Sri Nair, who was also working on depth from focus and defocus at the time. So these are all, those are different strands of research that kind of congealed into this area. I kind of still remember the first ICCP, which was in San Francisco back in 2008, I believe, which was, very interesting meeting at the time. And in fact, I remember even in that conference, one of the invited keynote speakers was talking about biological vision and animal eyes. So, very very interesting, very motivating presentations back then. Yeah.
And how would you say do you get your ideas from? What is your line of thought?
Difficult to say. I mean, I just want to do things that are personally interesting to me and that seem hard. Back early on, we were working on burst photography related problems, and then I kind of transitioned more, to a lower and lower level in the imaging pipeline. So, starting with just putting cameras together and just, maybe controlling them, either manually or with some, basic software to kind of quickly capture photos with different aperture settings and different focus settings, and then process this kind of data. Then we moved to, using programmable imaging with, SLMs. So we're sort of messing around with the optics to some extent. I mean, just modulation more than the lenses. But then, moved even lower to trying to think about how we can redesign the sensors, the sensors themselves, and now looking at, the fundamentals of image formation, photons, and how to process them, how to gain as much information as possible from that type of data. So again, I've been moving slow, more and low, low level. Yeah, there isn't. I think that's about it. Well, maybe. I mean, there's quantum, there is wavelength, there's all sorts of other related topics, of course. Yeah.
Cool. And what's your what do you think about let's say, the deep learning trend? Like, do you try to involve it? Do you try to avoid it? I notice some researchers say, I don't want anything to do with it. Or do you just say, okay, this is a tool. Is this something I need? I'll use it. But what's your interaction with it?
I mean, there are two. I think there are two different axes in which you can think about sort of these techniques. One is simply as a matter of how to do optimization. You can basically write fairly general objective functions and optimize them. So in that sense, this has been extremely useful and very, very powerful as a capability that has developed over the last few years, and I certainly see no reason not to use them. I think that I think that again, if you think about the types of priors that these systems can now provide, they are extremely powerful. But you can't forget your physics either, and so I think it's the combination of knowledge about the physical process of image formation and the ability to combine these priors in places where they make sense, that also could be extremely useful. So I have certainly no objections to this area, even though myself I haven't really invested too much time on the on those particular topics. I think they are certainly very interesting and very useful.